Good evening. Tonight is the February 22nd, 2023 board work session number 5. This is covering some various different items. And before we get into the actual board session, Ms. Hastings, would you call the roll for attendance?
Yes. Ms. Robinson?
Here.
Mr. Croto?
Here.
Mr. Richards?
Here.
Mr. Cotton?
Here.
Ms. Walsh?
Here.
Mr. Weinberg?
Here.
Ms. Meeker?
Here.
I am here, and Ms. Higgins is running late. Is that?
She has informed us that she will be here approximately 6 o'clock.
Okay. So I won't mark her here yet.
All right. So we have a quorum, and with that, I will pass on to Mr. Dunn directly.
Sure.
You want to start?
Yeah, I'll start off and then we'll tag team this. So this presentation is sitting in your Google Drive under work session 5. For the agenda tonight, these are some open items. If we don't hit them all, you can let us know, and there are stuff we're still working on. But we'll start off with curriculum assessment instruction and talk about a little bit of an overview as it relates to the overall budget, the PD money, and some assessments, one of the assessment softwares, see if that helps clarify a little bit. There was also a question about the athletic trainer. We have some more information on that for you. I'll also talk about Project C, a little bit of the history of that. The Project C, I'm trying to think. Yep, Project C and the request. And the pre-K program, the expenses and the revenue that come in from that. Review of things that have not come up yet, but wanted to make you aware, especially as it relates to the ESSER, what we call either the RIFs or the reductions that will be happening, because we don't have the money to keep it going, and these are people that were issued one-year only contracts, so they are not in the budget. And then positions that are continuing, I think that it's the same thing in my haste to reorganize this before I came down. Continuing or reducing the one-year only, that's the same thing. And then SRO at Runlet, although we were looking at the work sessions of, usually I do the opening and go through all the major changes. We didn't do that this year, so I wanted to make sure something got highlighted before you, because you're going to come back from break on that Monday, which is only a half-hour work session, and then that Wednesday's an action-packed one. So we wanted to get this out there so you're aware, because this is the only thing I can think of that you probably want to have a discussion on. And then a non-public session at the end, okay? So we'll go right into the curriculum assessment and the instruction. So that budget is made up of several different function codes as it related to the accounting piece. And one thing I should include in there as it relates to the budgets, it has the salaries for the superintendent of curriculum instruction, the curriculum coordinator, the assessment coordinator, any mentor stipends, PD stipends, contracted services. I should list on there also, and I will fix quickly, the software, supplies, and also all the negotiated conference and travel, as well as all the course reimbursement amounts. And that's a significant amount of money. I think you're talking about $287,000 plus maybe another $50 between conference and travel and course reimbursements. So that is all in these numbers. So when you see the next screen and you see, oh, it's 1.195 million, I didn't think we spent anything on PD, you have to parse it out and understand what that is. Up until last year, it was, again, mostly Title II money, and these were positions in here that were that you've been funding for several years. One has shifted from maybe an administrative account to the assessment account, because you had an director of student services and then you had an assistant superintendent. You now have an assistant superintendent whose focus is assessment, and now you have an assistant superintendent who focuses on special ed. So some of this was recalibrated when that change happened. But that is the overall budget for curriculum assessment. You also asked about comparing us to other districts. So there is the school district, that is their PD budget, and this is derived from looking at the budget the way the school districts have reported it, which is mostly in the contracted services line or in their PD line. So when you look at what we have spent, again, this is based on current year budgets, you see where we compare to other districts.
And is that, so I remember we talked about having the initial 80,000, then an additional 80,000, so is
Yeah.
this,
This is current year.
this is current?
Yeah, so you'll see in the new budget that the one I just showed, I can show you the two pots. The 70 is buried into salaries and benefits, but, and then you had also asked for a breakdown from the other night as it relates, what is the PD? So these are the after-school committee works, which would be based on stipends. That $38 rate is all-inclusive of FICA and New Hampshire retirement, because it's 30 plus the FICA plus the New Hampshire retirement. So that's how we come up with that number. And then based on the number of staff and how many hours that would be. So, and then this is the summer committee work. And then some contracted service work. And I hope, we didn't get a chance to touch base toward the end, but I was hoping that OGAP piece was right, because I pulled that from because I know the acronym pieces, you wanted a little bit more clarification about what that was. So I was trying to add that in and click on the piece. Yeah, an explanation of it.
Explanation.
That's for
of
one,
OGAP.
that's for one, and she wants to do two this summer, but I'm not sure if that will,
Yeah, no problem.
yeah.
Okay, and then the restorative justice piece. So when I take all three of those and add them up, it comes to 152,276. And the slide, the important note, I will delete that because that is on I think the next slide. Yes, I copied one and didn't get rid of that note. So if I move on to the curriculum piece as it relates to some materials, your instructional trust is really used for that purpose when you have these one-off big amounts, whether you're buying books, manipulatives, anything to get the program kicked off. And then after that, any replacements wind up into the general fund budget, but they're nowhere near what these numbers are. So that is what's nice about using the instructional trust when you need to, and I think you're up over $1 million in that. I meant to put the slide in there from the first presentation that shows your balances, but I can quickly throw that in if there's other conversation. Yeah, so that's a good use of those funds. Okay. And then we get into the iReady breakdown, because I know there was back and forth a little bit about that. So after a conversation with the rep, we wanted to show you what was funded this year in two different buckets. You had ESSER funding, and then Runlet has been in your general fund budget for the last 2 years. So that's total what was paid for that program this year. In FY24, there's two components that are getting added. Let me slow it down. If we were to just keep what we have and add a fourth grade, you hit a new quantity break price, one, and two, the cost of the PD changes. Okay, it actually goes down. So if you were to take the cost of the first one and compare it to the second, we could add a grade and go down to 41,000. But you'd only keep the assessment piece. And I apologize, there's no training, that's why. I'm getting a little ahead of myself.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm lost.
Yep, okay. First one included your professional development.
Okay.
Okay? And that was 55,000, and it was, I think, 4,000 per site. So when you did all that's in that number, and you only had 5th through 9th, it's 55,000. Okay? If you duplicate and take out any PD, because they've already had it, okay? And you went to grades 4 through 9, added a grade, not have the PD, the quantity break changes. You actually get a better discount when you add more when you have fewer, so the price goes down. Plus, you don't have the PD, which was 4,000 per site. So you take out the 20, you're at 35, then you have the slight price increase. Overall, you're at 41.
Okay.
That make sense?
Yeah.
The bottom part is for the PD.
So that's if we're comparing apples and apples.
Okay.
Now we go down to the next one down, where that takes the assessment, and now we're adding on the two instruction components, plus the PD for the instruction component. That makes everything a grand total of 69,000.
What's the instruction component?
I'll let you speak to that.
So the iReady is a rather complex assessment. It's a standardized assessment that students take 3 times a year and then progress monitored in between. When we brought it down to 5th grade, it was done at the end of the summer. There was little opportunity for training other than right when the school started off and then throughout the year. And we did not purchase the instructional component of it, just the assessment diagnostic piece, so that teachers could look at how the students are performing by doing the progress monitoring or doing the triannual assessment. Embedded within the program you have this group of students who are showing this deficit, and iReady actually sorts the students based on how they performed on different standards. You click on that group, because they've already grouped them for you, and they come up with instructional recommendations on how to target that particular deficit. That was very complex for the teachers. We felt this year it was too much information. We just wanted to get them used to the assessment tool. Unlike Runlit, they use the instructional piece, and they use it a lot for creating groups, win groups, what I need groups, for doing reteaching, and likewise extending work for students who are doing really well. So it has this algorithm that's pretty amazing that will help you cluster kids and then recommend different instructional approaches to meet their needs. This year, for the end of this season, they've offered it for free to us, and in particular, the high school is really using that piece right now because we brought it up to 9th grade, and they're really targeting those those readers who are 2 years and more behind using the instructional approach. So there is value in it. We feel that you really shouldn't have the assessment without the instructional piece, but in terms of what teachers could handle this year.
But for grade 4 next year, you'd be adding the testing and the instruction in 1 year?
That's the proposal, yes.
But you're not adding it at the high school because they already have it? It says not included at the high school, or not proposed. And I thought you said the 9th grade was using it.
Yeah, it's used with a small number of students. I want to say as many as 25 to 50 students, and I think that those educators, after having used the instructional components now, will have a really good understanding of how to target that instruction based on using it this year. Whereas it's relied on much more heavily at Runlet, and hopefully at the elementary schools will provide that. I mean, we were really looking at trying to be mindful of costs and expenses and rollout. But it does say, it does say 4 through 9 instructional access, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did include
It is
Is
there.
it included?
Not in the report.
Oh, you want this bigger?
So. Just Runlet, or just it's not in the quote sheet. That's where I pulled it from.
So presenting this price breakdown to us is not necessarily suggesting that the instructional piece isn't necessary. It's just, here's how things are going to cost. If you had your druthers, you would prefer that we would go with the 69,000 because it's the most encompassing version. Okay.
Kim, did you say that it will group students for you at the end of the assessment in terms of their needs, by name and by need?
Yes, it actually goes right down, drills right down to the student's name.
So in a case like the high school where there's only 25 or so kids, it's not as big a deal, although it's still a big deal, but in the case of 140 fourth graders, it's a very big deal.
It's a very big deal.
Yeah.
And I would say too, with the high school, they've been progress monitoring every single student. So by dipsticking constantly, using the assessment piece, they're able to quickly determine if the instruction that they're providing is impacting the students' learning.
Are we also, either now or intend to in the future, giving teachers an opportunity to take these groupings and regroup their teaching, so that if we four are in the same group but different classrooms, one teacher has the opportunity to reteach the things that we need and not have to duplicate it times 4?
I love it. That's exactly what we're looking at doing, is really teaching wisely and smartly, you know. That's a really good practice, to break the kids up across the grade level and target the instruction. It's a very smart way of teaching.
Thank you.
And how, and maybe we haven't had enough opportunity, but are we able to identify where our teaching needs to improve, and that the reading specialists or the math coaches are then working with instruction, teachers to improve the whole overall instruction? Can we see if there's a deficit,
We definitely have that capacity with using this tool, and again, it's been a gentle rollout this year.
Yep.
But going forward, that's the intent. The math coaches have been trained with using iReady and looking at the data, and the reading specialists as well. So we just started our data rounds. I know that you wanted to have some data around how students are doing in math and literacy. We do have a snapshot of 5th through 9th from iReady, but it's not the lower elementary, because we're not there yet. But we're able to look at progress that we've already seen so far, which is really amazing, and we'll share that with you in March.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Do you have any of that before we have to vote on this?
Well, in fairness, the 5th grade through 9th grade iReady data would not be representative enough of the elementary schools that have all of the math coaches. It does show progress, 5th through 9th with students. It shows good progress. However, as you know, math coaches are in kindergarten through 5th grade and 6th, 7th, and 8th. So, so I don't think that the iReady is the right tool. So I've talked to Chantel about getting us some data that would look at more discriminate data that would help you with the decision making. But I felt that it was a large leap to say this iReady is showing progress, therefore.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. That's all we have at the moment on the curriculum assessment and instruction. All right.
Thank you both. Appreciate you filling the blanks for us.
And Ellen has been a great help.
Yeah. Thanks, Ellen.
That quote stuff, we're on the phone with the vendor.
So I'll move on to the athletic trainer. Why they're certified athletic trainer and called ATC, I have no idea. That's just what it is. That's the trade, so I just go with it. This is a section from the bylaws as it relates to NHIAA, because we wanted to call over them and see what their recommendation was. So we pulled this from their manual, which I left the piece. It's a 13-page manual. There's a click to it on their bylaws, and I wanted to print at least the first page for you, which I did, but I left upstairs. But I wanted the leading section of paragraph is this from their document, so that you see. And what we've tried to do is fill in with people once we lost the contracted service folks that we used, and that worked until they couldn't get anybody. So that created the impetus for the athletic trainer. Oh yeah, you also asked for the list of other school districts that have it, which we have. So maybe I can try to, I didn't get it. Yeah. So I'll retro that in. Maybe when we have a quick break, I can retro it in, because Kathleen, you could send it. So I wanted to just highlight that position for the staff member, and again, it was $79,295 that was added partially through this year, about $25,000 ad, because we had to get somebody, because we were and then we reduced the contracted services that we did have by 29,000, because that's what was for, we were paying the outside company.
And have we always only used athletic trainers or not EMTs or?
No, before that, we used to have, in the co-curricular scale, if you look in the teacher CBA, it had a stipend for someone to do that coverage. So when you go back and you look at the various different people, systems developed to call medical and site, I mean, they were fill-ins. So if they did some basic training, they were there to support it. That went away quite a while ago because they couldn't get somebody. And then we went to the contracted service model, and now right into the athletic trainer model.
Just maybe a stupid question, but I'll ask it anyway. What do we do when we have more than one sport going on at a time in different places?
Well, if my understanding from the director is if it's a away game, it's the trainer, whoever
It's
at the
their
other,
problem.
and if it's ours. But they prioritize it based on the need of the sport. And they have a cell phone, and they can float between sports if they're local.
For example, when we had soccer games, like the men's and the women's
Yep.
team, they usually were at the same field when they were home. So if you're looking at Memorial Field set up, maybe there was a game on one field over there and then and one on the other, and the athletic trainer would just go around. And same if there was a baseball game. You're kind of in a general vicinity.
But what do we do if we have basketball and hockey as we do in the winter? 'Cause they're in two.
They would likely lean towards the hockey more than the
Oh, wow.
basketball.
But it says that we have to have personnel at all practices and contests.
We can get the director to give us a breakdown on how he is covering. Now, granted, all the staff, even the coaches, they all have some basic training to get through. But we know we can't have one person at every one. As Jonathan said, they kind of split, but, I mean,
It looks like
I
number
guess-
8 may be the
Yeah,
saving
number
grace.
8
exactly.
is the savior. I
They know
guess.
it's just not realistic for us to have one at every single. I mean, it's hard enough to get to where we are now. And we're still not there. You got the vote.
And we have our nurse practitioner. And so Laura has, when Steve has asked her to fill in, so she is available and she's more than willing and has been doing it since she came on board in the fall. So she is a good backup if he has multiple things. But I know when I talk to Steve, he prioritizes the event. I don't know why they said hockey, but apparently it's dangerous.
Yeah, the one thing he said, if it's football or hockey, he wouldn't run them without one. They're the two.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And
So,
does the athletic trainer have other duties?
yeah. And we can give you their full job description if you want that. We can load that into the folder. Yeah. I asked her for it earlier and I just got sidetracked. So, okay. Oh, I already did that slide, sorry. That's where I'm listing it, so I will come back and retro this slide. Hopefully you have a break or have other discussion, but we do have that. All right, so going back to Project C in the
So
programs.
before you move
Yeah.
on, Jack, can I
Yeah.
ask a question?
Yeah.
As I'm looking at that, we have a budget, you have budgeted an athletic trainer for $79,295,
Yeah,
and we're going to reduce our contracted service by $29,000.
we did.
Why are we now reducing it by $79,000 or more because of a contracted? I mean, I can't imagine that a contracted service is just $29,000. And if so, why aren't we doing the contracted service again? Because it's so much less than $79,000.
Because
So
they
tell me
can't
what-
get anybody. Otherwise, we'd still be with a contracted service.
Okay.
But were they only looking at athletic trainers? I guess is the question. I mean, we can't get an EMT.
Or
Couldn't get an EMT. He called, he called all the rehabs
Do that.
in the area to see if he could find somebody there, including the hospital. He couldn't find anybody.
Yep. Met with
It
the
was-
hospital.
It was-
Sportsnet, have you heard of them? That's another local organization. They have nobody.
I just read an article today that there's a shortage of EMTs, actually.
Yep.
I'm saying we're lucky to have one.
so if adding
Yeah,
an
we-
athletic trainer, are we looking to add that as a one-year contract?
They're like us. They're all one-year contracts.
Okay, just
Yeah.
checking.
Yep.
So that next year, if there's a plethora of athletic
Oh, yeah.
trainers. We would be contracted, we could be able
Right.
to make that change.
Yep.
And with the significant shortage of athletic trainers and EMTs, we're confident that we'll be able to find someone to, or we have found someone to fulfill this role.
We have.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. Yeah. Took a couple months, but we did.
Okay, yeah. A struggle, I'm sure.
Yeah, we tried salaries a little lower and just couldn't.
Yeah,
We're just not attractive, so,
yeah. Okay.
okay. Now, again, that number is all in. That's FICA, New Hampshire retirement, health benefits,
It's really not.
the whole thing.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah, so,
That's what the market will
okay,
bear.
yeah. Okay, so the Project C assistant, so we put this there, this was the history. We know, you had a member of the public hand you a book, I think the night this came up, so you have that. This is, an email we received from Stephanie Bowser, who is now the Project C coordinator. She is the third one in the history, because you had Luann, and then you had Edwina before that, so not bad for a, what is that, a 50-some-year record?
53-year-old.
Yeah, 53-year record, having 3 people.
That was pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So it has a long thing, but she wrote this to us, so we wanted to convey that to you. And I think I put in here. So this is the excerpt from the opening slide of the cost of those 4 program assistants that are needed, and she defined that, what each of them do. She did provide schedules. I didn't put the schedules in here, but I can dump it into your folder if you want. It was a multi-page document that had
Every minute.
what
counts.
their schedule, yeah, what their schedules are. So they do a nice job. But again, that was funded under Title II. It was not allowed. We moved it to ESSER, and with ESSER funds going away, the proposal moved to the general fund.
Can I, from a personal and professional perspective, explain what happens with Project C, what these 4 positions mean in the classroom? So, once a month, you have someone come in from Project C, and they teach your class a hands-on science project, where they are learning, making, doing all of the science inquiry that we want kids to learn in the classroom, while the teacher goes to professional development with Chantel around math. And that might be looking at assessments the students have taken to find places where we need reteaching. It might be, I'm missing the word, when you all look at the same thing, so you're grading equally without.
Calibration.
Calibration, you might be calibrating different things, thank you. There's a lot that happens in there, and it is an opportunity for PD during the day that we don't have a lot of. Most of the teacher professional development takes place after school, in meetings, or if you sign for one of the extra things to do in the summer. So it's not just a break, and I guess I want to make that very clear, that that everybody's working hard, and the kids, it's one of the rare chances they really get to dig into science. And the people that come in and do this have been quality. We've been very lucky to have such quality teachers coming in. I'm sad to see that we cannot use Title II or Title I to help with this. But we're looking at so many new positions being requested. I think this one's going to hurt if we don't continue it. But that's just my thoughts on that. I just wanted to let you know what it really looks like in practical standards.
Can I ask, is this a, like, 3's necessary but 4's nice situation, or is this like you need all of these positions filled in order for the Project C operation to run?
It's definitely a need for all of them,
Okay.
except the size of the clusters of a particular building. In some cases, you know, we were down one assistant at the start of the school year, and we were just shaking our heads and scratching, how are we gonna make this work? It's just really, we really need them.
Thank you.
And if you ever walk into a classroom where a Project C lesson is going on, it's just absolutely amazing to see the level of engagement. But in addition to this, they do field trips. So environmental, agricultural-based field trips.
Okay. Oh,
So, initially, when we heard about this, I was a little sketchy about it. I'd say a better word, I'm sure, but because I was part of that mid-70s where it was two people. But I had the fortunate experience of talking with principal at Krista McAuliffe the other day. And so I asked, you know, how big a deal is this to really have this here? And she said, it's got to happen. You know, it just really has to happen. And went on to talk about the same kinds of professional development time that Brenda had just talked about. And Chris is a person I've known a very long time. I totally trust what she has to say about it. If she says it's needed, I guess I believe it. And the one part I don't know is how long a time period is one of these, so that, in other words, how does this orchestrate into professional development time for these teachers? How long are these classes or
So they come in for 45 minutes. It's not long.
Okay.
They meet for 45 minutes in that PLC, that math PLC. We'd love to be able to do something like this for literacy as well, but so the grade level teachers get together and work with Chantel, and the math coaches and the math tutor are in the room, and they look at student work for that 45 minutes, and they talk about what the next steps are for instruction. So that's what happens in that, while the Project C is in those classrooms for that 45 minutes. So you can just imagine, if I'm pulling all the fourth grade teachers, why we need the 4 program assistants to be in the classrooms while I'm pulling those 4 classroom teachers.
And is that time exclusive for professional development or what was your word that you used so wonderfully?
Calibration.
Calibration.
Yeah, it is.
New to me word.
It's we call them PLCs, professional learning communities, and that's a model. It's a nationwide model where we look at data, student performance data, and make decisions on next steps for instruction.
Good. Perfect. Thank you.
I have been asking my kiddos about the things that would impact them in their classroom day, and they have resoundingly endorsed Project C to me. Both of them have field trips to the White Farm site coming up soon. They look forward to it. It is classroom time that is joyful and involved and very hands-on. And I think the more project-based learning we can give kiddos, the better. It's just a different way of looking at learning. And
It's the process,
scientific
process.
Yeah, so I've been very upfront with them about if you want it, you better advocate for it.
Incidentally, for those field trips, the teachers do attend with the class.
Yeah.
It's-
Okay.
No, I'm good. I'm just putting in the list of districts for the athletic trainer. I saw an opportunity, so
saw
it's not as clean as I like it, but
It's
it's
in
at
there.
least, hopefully it's understandable enough that you understand kind of where some districts are doing. So I'm going to put that on the screen right now, if that is okay. Okay. Oop, no, don't worry. Okay. So Portsmouth, they did not supply, no cost supplied by Wentworth Douglas Hospital, so that must be who they use, but they did not supply one. BG Safe Sports Network, 25 grand. That's the company we reached out to. They didn't have anybody. Londonderry has 2 full-time trainers. Pinkerton.
Bishop Girton, BG, or what is B?
Oh, yeah. Yep,
Bishop
that's
Girton,
right.
okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yep. That's why I didn't have time to clean this up. Sorry. I like my columns. Londonderry, Pinkerton, full-time, 2 full-time. Dover has a full-time by, well, I guess Wentworth Douglas Hospital. Wyndham contracted. Alvarine, 40K contract. Bedford, Safe Sports Network. And then you see Salem Spalding full-time and Keene through Dartmouth. All of organizations in which we called and didn't have anybody
Concord and Dartmouth, Hitchcock didn't want to provide anything?
They don't
That's
have-
the obvious
That's-
question, isn't
yeah.
it? They have no interest.
We've reached out. They don't have anybody. It's like that Safe Sports Network. We're top on their list if they get somebody,
Yeah.
from what the athletic director has told me, but they can't get anybody.
I don't know. I feel like that is a place where the hospital could be a real community partner.
No, we understand.
Yeah,
So it's just,
And we can't do this as a part-time position? It seems like based on the contracted services, these are part-time positions.
yeah. We can revisit that for you.
Who
I will.
does Bishop Brady and St. Paul's use in the Concord other?
Bishop Brady used the Safe Sports because they've had the same person for 6 years. I know that because I went to the meeting, saw that. I was impressed. I called up Mello. I said, "How do we get this one?" He goes, "Don't even go there. I already tried." So we've tried to poach even from my kid's own school, but that's okay. It happens. Yeah. So we'll get you some more details as it relates to this. Okay. All right, so we did the Project C. Okay, pre-K program. I think was asked about the overall expenses and then what revenue we get. So that is the overall expenses for the program. This does include, I think the next slide is where I list the requested position for Abbott Downing. And then the revenue is about 35,000. That has gone down slowly over the years. And I think some of those rates range from like $140 for, the month. It's not a lot of money because they're only half programs and they're 2 and 3 day options. So, but as more and more needs, when they're coded, then they don't pay. So this is the tuition.
The contracted services aren't on here, so the slots that we have at Woodside are not on here.
So they might be coded under special ed, not specifically pre-K. So I'll look at that. It could be just the way it was coded.
And I assume,
Mhm.
based on my experience with
Yep.
childcare, that we pay for those slots whether we use them or not. If we
That's
want them
correct.
to keep-
We have
wanna
the
keep them.
upfront commitment. It used to be 10 slots, now we do 5. So that's correct. Because there was, I remember years they were trying to be very conservative. We only have 8, but we need to. So, and it's tough now because if they don't have the staff and it's full, you got to get what you can. And John said we're required. So, and then I also note down there that there's a preschool grant under IDEA that we use. And that ranges between 36 and 38K. I don't know if you want to speak to what you can do with that money, but
We can do a lot right now. It funds about 0.4 of the preschool teacher. Preschool teacher. The majority of our IDEA grant goes to salaries.
yeah, 30. Yeah, we have 36, 38. Yep. And then again, this is that position to make Abbott Downing have a preschool teacher there. That's the cost. That's all benefits all in. It's our typical budgeted amount for a teacher. Now again, that's a Master's 5, Family Plan, New Hampshire Retirement, FICA. That's standard what we do. Yeah, every group has what their standard is, and that's what we put in to make them in less. But that's the ins and outs that
So
us through the year.
it could be less than that
It
if
could
you're
be.
not looking at a master's 5.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Will there be any assistance with those folks, that person?
Yeah, they're coming. They're already in the budget in CRTC,
Yeah.
so they would be transferred over.
Okay.
It's like sort of combining in with
Yeah.
an existing preschool at CRTC.
Okay, where'd you come?
A magic.
All right. So let's see if I started something here and I don't think I finished. See if I have this breakdown. So we had ESSER positions that were, all of these were in ESSER this year. 2 of them, the top 2 there, we have requested to come out, which are the district OT. And then also that family literacy facilitator for the .14 to make them whole. So the ones down below are all ones that are going away, that we do not have in the budget and do not have in ESSER. And we wanted to make you aware of those. I'm sorry, let me clarify. The district wellness director is in for 1 more year. And that had been planned for 3 years that we had with ESSER. The other ones are gone. But as we looked at possibly where to fund some other things, like the special education, if they looked at the identified students and they needed to add a teacher, we would look to the IDEA funds to do that. Now, keep in mind, again, when you put somebody in there, we also you make Medicaid billable. So we have to weigh, especially if it's a 1 year only or if it's not a full time, it may not be it may be worth putting it in IDA rather than getting the revenue. Okay.
Can you remind me the math coach positions that are being reduced for next year? Are they still being funded by ESSER then?
No.
So where are they? So they would move from ESSER to general fund?
We've moved them to the general fund, so the question is, do they count for all of them that were ESSER?
3 out of 6. It was the 3 out of,
Yeah.
3 out of the 6 were
3 of 6,
proposed.
okay.
Sorry.
And the math tutors, again, if warranted, some of them could go into Title I as well. They may not stay at the same school because it is based on rank order, but if the needs are there, then we certainly could use those individuals and move those positions into Title I. You can move from federal source, but once you take it out, you can't put it back in.
Do you understand rank order? Just quick.
I am
a
happy
quick-
to talk chart.
Just quick.
Very quickly, all of our schools, in order to be school-wide schools, there are certain thresholds. If they become school-wide schools, they're always going to stay school-wide schools as long as they remain Title I eligible. So their poverty rate stays 35% or above. All of our elementary schools have always qualified, I should say, since Abbott Downing and Chris McAuliffe wrote a plan to be school-wide schools. Now that they qualify, even if their poverty rates dip below 35%, they are grandfathered in. Within school-wide schools, based on the free and reduced rates, schools are ranked because they're in the same grade band, and the Department of Education considers elementary as a grade band, not our particular pre-K through 5, grade bands. And they get ranked based on need. So from there, they get a school-based allocation. I have a formula that I use, and they have to spend per pupil more. The rank number 1 school has to spend more per pupil than the rank number 2 school. Number 2 has to spend more than number 3, 3 more than 4, etc. That makes sense.
So what you're saying is if we put them in Title I, they could not split their time equally among elementary school students. They would have to spend more of their time
Correct.
in one.
At the
one-
highest need. Yeah, exactly. So the location may change, but I have run the numbers and we could fund the math tutor positions under Title I if the need bears out, assuming our allocation remains about the same.
Okay. I wanted to highlight this because we wanted to just make you aware. In this budget, awesome, where's that slide? There's a slide that has the amount. It's 95,000 some odd dollars.
Where did this come from, Jack?
It was in the budget. I didn't do my opening this year, so I feel like I was Billy Crystal at the Oscars and didn't do the opening, you know? So, yeah. So it's in the numbers.
Yeah, I just feel the need to say that I'm very uncomfortable with putting a school resource officer in a middle school just from the school to prison pipeline aspect of things. I understand that teachers feel a need for greater resources, but I will continue to argue that this is not it.
And is this general funds?
Yep,
And how much did you say?
95,000 some odd dollars. I think it's 95,587, something like that.
Is that split with the city, or?
Oh, yeah, it's a 75-25 split. We pick up 75, they pick up 25. Same thing as the high school.
Can we
for the execs.
renegotiate that?
Right?
Well, if that counts for all the days that they're at our place, you can either, they literally give us, it's cost. It's not like there's a markup. It's salary, benefits, New Hampshire retirement, everything. And then they just take 75% of it, which
Because they
equals
spend
about.
75% of their time with us, or
Yeah.
The year.
of the year?
Yeah, when you take the number of days and hours, and it all equates to that, yeah.
Can I get just a clarification, since this is just like an open work session based on things we've already discussed, but this is new. So is it a preview of a broader discussion we're going to have as part of like safety or?
This is why we wanted, no, it's not. We
Okay.
wanted to throw this out there now before you post the budget. We wanted you to be aware, because I know this has come up in the past. This is the only thing I can say that I could think of that is in here that you probably definitely needed to be aware of, based on prior discussions.
So, in our opening discussion, it was actually a discussion of all, of new positions and position eliminations, and that wasn't on the list. So are there any other positions
Yeah,
No.
that
This
that were
is-
not on the list?
And the reason why, they are people that we own. This is a contracted service. We don't own them.
Okay.
So I didn't highlight that because it's not somebody we own.
And this isn't like the athletic director where this has already been handled and somebody is already,
No.
like,
No.
this is not.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. This is just, you have money for it, and it's.
Does that
decide whether
cost,
you-
does that cost the same as what we have at the high school?
That's what I mimicked it off of.
Okay,
So again, depending on the experience and who they bring in,
right.
it could be lower. I mean, I've had that where, you know, especially when you have the change, because they give us the bill in November and it has, here's what your estimated cost is for next year
And the 95,000 is the 75% of the cost?
of all the, yep, their total cost.
And how much are math tutors again? Per position?
The math tutors?
Yeah,
Math coaches.
math coaches, sorry.
Oh, the coaches. They're they're on the CEA scale, so it
Yeah, they're 100 some
is
thousand.
very different, but they're about about a
I mean,
120 all in like
All in.
yeah.
That's for all three of them?
Three of
No,
them?
no, no,
each.
no.
No,
Each.
120.
Teachers'
Yeah,
okay.
pull the
Yeah,
slide.
teacher scale.
All in with benefits, retirement, FICA.
All right.
So, you know, you've had this discussion in the past, you know, we've talked about the discipline, we looked at the discipline, we did surveys, we surveyed the families, we surveyed the teachers in the schools, and there was an interest in, a strong interest in having an SRO at Runlet. We clearly recognize the notion about the concerns that some people have about having the officer at the school. But we do have we have over 800 students at that school, and with that comes a variety of times that the school needs support, and they are called in over there for students, and so we knew that this was, and I knew this was something that needed to have further discussion with you. I don't, you know, I don't know as it was a surprise, since we had spent so much time last year on this and kind of put it off, but I think you need to have that discussion around this and whether you want to support that extra position at Runlet. I mean, it's clearly for the middle school, and based on the data that we had, and I think I'll yield over there to Brenda because she served on the committee with me. So,
Do we get charged when Runlet makes a call to the police department now? Like I know when we call the fire, we get a charge for that. Do we get charges?
Fire department, we do. The police department, we only get charged when we call them for the purposes of an event.
And how often do we do that at Runlet?
That's what I can, I mean, it'd be an athletic event if we
Or
need them to
dance,
cover.
those kinds of things.
Basketball or, yeah.
It's not for the day-to-day
But no,
things.
day-to-day.
Because
and
how often, do we know how often the police are called to Runlet
I don't know.
offhand?
I don't know.
that'll be
Yeah.
okay. Question, I don't know.
Can you get the numbers too of the one-year only RMS social worker position that
Yep.
was funded by ESSER?
Yep. Yeah, once I go offline, I can probably pull it. I just,
I can pull it if you want.
yeah, I just don't want to show the screen because it highlights, you know.
So, I came from a school where we had a school resource officer. We shared one actually with our high school. And it's not a matter of how many times a school called the police in the past year that would make it make sense. It's how many times, because you have someone there who has established rapport, that you can call upon to help out in a situation. And that number is, much greater, I suspect. There are certain times that youngsters present behaviors that administrators and teachers cannot deal with. Cannot. They would like to, but they cannot. And police can. And those times that happens, other students stop learning. So if you have youngsters in a hallway that's a main hallway or in a classroom, all of those other kids who can hear the disruption stop learning. And if that happens sometime, 3-4 times a week, that's a lot of time over the course of 180 or so days. One of the keys, I think, is choosing the right person. And that person can't be, in my opinion, can't be someone who's going to walk in and say, it's my way or the highway. And because middle school kids are going to say, guess what? It's my way or the highway, because that's what middle school kids do. And then, trouble happens. The person who needs to be hired, has to have some attributes. And among others, they have to like middle school kids. They have to like that age and want to establish rapport, so that prevention becomes the big deal rather than triage. That's my opinion, and I'm sure there's others, and I'd love to hear any more discussion.
Grateful for your input. Grateful for your input.
Thanks.
If I could, we did have a lot of discussion around SROs last year. And there's probably lots of room for further discussion on it. I guess my bigger concern is we're looking at a fairly substantial increase in the budget as it is. School safety is a very important issue, and one I know everybody on the board is concerned with, but I think we need to really take a hard look in deciding if we really need to do it this year, given the increases we're looking at. My initial reaction is that maybe not, but I'm willing to listen to other people's thoughts on it.
I have a question. The new program that's being established for students at Runlet, that John presented to us, could that potentially be mitigating some of the issues that Runlet has identified by creating what I would say is an excellent partnership across the community and across resources? Shouldn't we, in our due diligence, especially from a budgetary standpoint, see how that program works with kiddos who are potentially having multiple outbursts? I am more interested in community care designs of restorative justice as opposed to having a law enforcement officer within the school walls. And so would it be wise, it's more of a rhetorical, would it be wise for us to watch for a year of this new program that I think is pretty revolutionary and something that I would love to support if there ever was a dip in funding? Can we see what that looks like and how that changes the tenor of what's happening within the school?
So I have this doesn't even include the SRO on this slide, right?
No, because this is just our staff.
This is just our staff.
But I
And
wanna
our
let you know
staff at
that-
$1.2 million means a 2% increase in the tax rate.
Yeah.
I lean towards some of the statements that were made by Mr. Godden that we have a lot to cut right here, in my personal opinion. And while I understand that there are some folks that would argue and say that this is the time for the SRO, I'm not sure that this is the year for it. Go ahead and then address your hand.
This is staff changes, but this isn't all of the new positions. Do you have a slide that has all of the new positions, the assessment coordinator, the athletic trainer, all on one so that we could see what the changes in staff would be if we put curriculum coordinator, assessment coordinator, athletic trainer, district OT,
Yep. I think that's the opening.
DEIJ, yeah.
Let me see if I'm goofing up here. So these are I think between the opening slide carried all our staff. They were the ones that we knew. Like, so there's the district OT, the ARPN, the athletic trainers down the bottom. Those two slides have everything that you will own as employees.
And what's the total on that? Do you have that there? I'm not
1.2
seeing it.
million.
1.2?
1.22479.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
It's the two slides.
The two
Okay.
slides summed
Yep, sorry.
together.
Okay.
What's the curriculum coordinator you're referring to?
I just saw that on one of these. It said, because
It's a reduction in her salary.
Yeah.
it's a reduction, it's not an addition.
It's not an
No.
addition,
Okay.
it's a reduction.
Okay, I thought I saw it as listed with the assessment
I
coordinator.
believe this year was around 50,000 and we reduced it down to 25.
Is the assessment coordinator a new position?
No?
So we
That was
had-
new last year in '23. If you
And that was all
remember.
ESSA, right?
Well, no.
No?
We remember we had proposed an instruct coordinator person. It was 149,000. Board said, we'll split it. We'll give you 80 for your PD, and the other portion, that's how we got Mary, for the hourly rate. So that went into the budget in '23. Now in '24, we reduced that, but you have an assistant superintendent dedicated to assessment,
Right.
curriculum, and instruction.
I was gonna say
That
that,
makes
if I
sense?
remember correctly, yeah, no offense, but, we had that in there because we didn't have an assistant
Right,
superintendent.
right.
And I will just at this point, and I can and may in the future say, as I pointed out to those of you who were a part of this committee 3 years ago, that ESSER funds go away and
Right.
positions need to go away. The problem, the real risk of taking a grant that is a one-time grant is that you make it seem like it's going to last going on. One-time grants go to one-time costs, or otherwise you're just adding and adding and adding huge amounts onto your budget. So, much as I don't think anyone, including me, would say these positions aren't worth the money they have. It's a question of, do we have the money? Now that the federal government isn't paying for this any longer, do the senior citizens that are out there and the people who are struggling to have apartments and homes, do they have the extra money to put into this? Because I've had, and you have too, those who have been here, those calls where they call you and say, I'll need to sell my house and move out of Concord. So let's keep that in mind as we look at the funds or the positions that are in there, and be very judicial as far as who we pick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just want to say, though, that I would have been remiss at not presenting that concept. It was talked about last year.
Mhm.
You bandied it about, and,
No.
you know, we had data that indicated there was an interest in that position. So I felt like it's important that we bring it forward, what you do. And we trust me, we understand the impact of the budget and what it means in the positions. And so I think we would have been remiss at not doing it.
No,
We were very
no,
clear from the
I agree.
beginning, too, that ESSA was 3 years. We knew that was, but we made a decision that we would focus on student learning. We were going to pour everything we could into positions to try to close the gap. And so we added positions that would help us, and we fully anticipate the impact of that now that the grants are running out. And so, your thoughts are right on. We knew that 3 years ago.
Yeah. No, but we supported, and
And
those of us who
supported
were
us,
around
and
still,
supported us,
you know,
right?
thought that was great during our COVID issues because we had some extraordinary conditions that we were working in at the time. And I know there'll be some people in the public that will surely comment, because they comment to me frequently about the SRO position. We have hard decisions to make, and we'll have to take a look at it. Other questions? Go ahead.
So I don't have a question. It's back to the school resource officer, and that position can be a very emotional position to talk about. So, along with Tom, I think I'm the only one at the table that's ever taught at a high school that had a resource officer. And so I just want to share a story. So when we start talking about what we might do for our students at Runland, we keep in mind elements of what I'm going to share. So I was teaching health. It was final exam day, last day of the quarter. I'm at my computer typing away. The students are behind me. It was that downstairs room. I think she might have.
No windows.
Yeah, no, there's tons of windows. We could climb right out onto the grass. Not that we ever did. So anyway, I'm typing away, and this student named George says, Barb, and I'm like, quiet, people are finishing. I'm trying to keep them quiet. And I turn around, and there's two girls beating the crap out of each other by the hair and all this. So I get up, and I'm like, somebody go get Mr. Connolly is what I thought of. And Jason Wimpy was the SRO at the time, and he was a Concord High School graduate. And so I went and put myself in between the girls, which maybe was a stupid thing to do. They were sitting in their desks, and I got in between them so I can get their hands out of their hair. Now I'm like this. So now I'm getting not handled, I'm getting hit. So I keep them apart, and we stand up, and I get the girl behind me, somebody gets her, and out in the hall she goes, and the other girl knocks me down. She's on top of me now. So we're, the school secretary's, hello, it took a while. So finally, Officer Wimpy and Gene Connolly come down. And because I had been struck, they had to file sort of like a report or whatever, so we had to go to court. So I didn't want a court, and that the cultural differences between these two girls, one grew up in Concord, one was a refugee student from a small country in Africa that historically has a very sort of hardcore violent culture. So her problem-solving skills were to be aggressive. She wasn't trying to be a jerk. That was what she knew. And so we have this court date, and we're all there, and we don't want to go, and we've tried to see, can we not do it, but we have to follow protocol. And our school resource officer went in and spoke to the judge and explained the whole nature of what happened, and really advocated for these two girls, particularly the refugee student who was different language and all this. He was amazing, and he really just took care of her. Which at the time surprised me. This was like 2007, 2008. It was a long time ago, and the nature of the dynamics of our cultural influx into Concord was a lot harder to handle than it is now. So, in my opinion, when I think of an SRO, I think of that. I realize that not all SROs are that way, but whoever we have, do whatever it is we need to have done, whether it's a social worker, it needs to be somebody that does that. Like, I look at that as an example of what has to happen. And I don't know that has to be a police officer. I'm just sharing the story because it's a real story involving the people that we're talking about. So that's all. And I actually was at the beach like 10 years later, like 2 summers ago, and there was one of the girls, big pregnant, she's with her babies, and I'm like, the fight! So she was one of the girls that was in the fight. We laughed about it and talked about it and all that. So anyway, that's my story. I have no need for response, unless you want to.
No, just the run. I do not remember that. I don't think I was there, but the Runlet social worker right now is about 116, all inclusive out of ESSER. So with an increase,
We'd be
120.
120.
And that's currently out of ESSER?
Correct. Yep.
Jack, when we asked previously about math coaches, you said 120.
Yeah.
But I see 78 and
So-
71.
Yeah.
So I'm having a little math.
Well, the issue,
Issue here.
their replacements are those prices. The people that are in those positions are gonna be in the higher echelon. So when that happens is if they'll go back to their entitlements, these people will get bumped. So the savings is those numbers.
So
Sorry.
wait a minute. We have people who are more expensive right now that are in the
They're in the math
Coach.
coach
in
position.
the math coaching
Sure,
position.
yeah.
And if
absolutely.
we extend 3 math coaching, those three of those people won't, like, any of those people aren't going to be able to be in that position, or can they stay in that position?
They would stay in that.
Their leave of absence.
Because they would stay in that position, and then, so where the salary go from 120 down to 78?
No, because they're
So
entitled to a
these are,
job.
these
That's
are
the
artificially
saving.
low numbers.
No. No.
These are the replacement costs.
Right, this
for
is what it-
classroom
right.
teachers.
Oh, you're
Their
saying that the
salaries
really
are
good
already-
people stay at the tutor
Yeah,
position
because they're
in the
entitled. They've
classroom,
been
we
here
hire
for-
someone.
yeah.
to-
The more
One-year-olds.
experienced, right.
And we
1
put in
year
their
old.
replacements in the ESSER not to eat as much ESSER money up so that we could have more
Okay.
room in ESSER. That's why we did it.
I get it, okay. But,
And we didn't want to create a big, otherwise this would be a bigger cliff by probably about 150,000 if we had not done what we did.
Alright.
Make sense?
Yeah.
but you wouldn't hire somebody that costs more than that, right? If they applied. Or would we?
We budget 112,142 for a teacher if they're a zeroed position. So if the math coaches go away, people go back to entitlement, all those will be reductions. And those folks that cover those positions could apply for an open position.
Okay.
So that, it could be potential savings, yes, if you cut those coaches.
Well, I'm just saying, you have it budgeted at 71. What are the odds that it's at 84?
It's not, because that's the person that would go. We budgeted the people that are the last ones in. They're the
Oh, and
reductions.
keeping those 3. These wouldn't be new positions. These are people that you would say, you, and you.
Yeah,
right?
they're the reductions.
Thank you.
Okay.
So that's your savings, and then those people go back to their entitlements, and they're already accounted for in the budget because they're in the overall budget number right now, including these 3 positions.
That makes you feel better. It took me about 4 months to understand that, and because
I
the way
feel
it was
seen right now.
initially written in the ESSER grant did not use the term replacement, classroom replacement. So it was very hard for me to understand why our math coaches were.
When it was done 3 years ago, I understood what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
They did not want to create the cliff
Fiscally, yeah.
that those math coach 100 and say
Yep.
54,000 because family and all that on somebody that's a master's plus 30, it's going to be up there. And that's why. So they put the replacements in ESSER and kept the people in their entitled.
Whatever their entitlements were.
Their entitlement is all the way through, even though they took a leave of absence from what they normally do to take the math coach, they're the teachers that are replacing them.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
All 6 math coaches were current teachers.
Right.
Some of them very high on the scale.
Mm-hmm.
All 6 said, I'm going to take a leave of absence. And when we brought in basically the substitute or the 1-year-only teachers, we brought in them at a low price. But the math coaches are still, so it shouldn't really say math coach, it should say math coach
Replacement. Yeah.
Because the
Right.
math coaches themselves, all 6 of them are still working in the district. So the
Okay.
position's going away, not the people.
So the positions of but there are people going away. The people who are the replacements are going to go away.
Right, if we don't hire
But
them.
they're not going to go over to this position, or could they, and make that higher than the 71? Because they're already here.
They're all
They're
1-year-old.
already in the budget. Any cuts to those would be reductions. You could potentially cut $200,000. Yes.
4 to 6 positions.
Or, yeah, well, the 6, there's no cut because they're not in the general fund, right?
Okay.
This, we're looking at bringing it back for one more year, is that correct?
3 of the coaches.
3 of the
3 out
coaches
of
for
6.
one more year.
Yes.
And there was a lot of advocacy from
Yes.
administrators for these positions. What's to say we're not going to have that same advocacy next year? And we were pretty clear when we said these were ESSER positions, they were 2 years only, don't get used to them.
I
And
think-
now
I think
we've
that-
gotten used to them,
Right,
and they're
I think
helpful.
that's the problem, is that, I mean, they are very impactful people. There's 6 of them. They do amazing work, and it's no surprise that the administrators are vying for these positions. We can't afford to keep 6 positions into the ESSER fund. A compromise this year was 3 and split them among the 6 schools. And then next year, you could decide to, keep them into the operating budget, add 3 more back to the 6, or to eliminate the position as math coaches. That would be a budgetary decision.
So, but to your point, the amazing people that are math coaches now aren't going to be the ones that are in this position next year.
Yeah, they are. aren't they?
No, they're going back to being teachers.
No.
3 of the
no.
6.
3 of the 6?
3 of the
3 of the
6.
6 will continue as coaches.
And so this is kind of the math coaches are costing us $360,000. The replacement teachers that are teaching the class
240.
that these math coaches would go to are costing less. So yeah, we're going to have great math coaches, but they're not going to be teachers. They're going to be math coaches.
Right.
If we eliminate these positions, those great people will be teachers, right?
And not have math coaches.
Correct.
I will say that I have a 9-year-old that had hit that cliff where, like around 7 or 8 years old, statistically girls start to move away from STEM because they lack the confidence in those classes. I've seen a complete about face with the implementation of these math coaches. It's been incredible to watch her confidence climb in math, and to hear her say, "I love math," was not what she was saying before these positions were brought in. So in my own household, I'm seeing the positive reinforcement of these positions. And, we've had, like Brenda said, significant amount of advocacy asking for these positions. I have not heard advocacy for any other position that we are entertaining. So while I am looking forward to being very diligent with this budget, because I too am feeling the implications of increased property taxes, it's a very real thing that that everyone at this table is coping with. I'm seeing the positive influence of these positions in real time.
My position, my point is that I'm sure we're seeing positive of all of these positions.
Oh, yeah.
So we're saying the math coaches are good, but the district OT is not so. We can afford to lose that one. No, they're going to come to someone else is going to advocate for the district OT.
We're going to have to make some cuts that are
So
going to hurt.
we're going to have to make some decisions.
Agree.
Yeah.
It's gonna hurt.
And if it makes, I agree, math coaches are great. I mean, and if we could cut half class sizes to 15, we'd even see better, but it's all expensive. So, and then if there's any silver lining to the math coaches, if we don't carry the math coaches forward, and once again, as you said, it's 1 year, right? Those math coaches are going to be our teachers in elementary school or teachers in the school. And don't we really hire our teachers to be math coaches for the kids too? Our math teachers? I mean, maybe my expectation is very high, but
Well, the math
Yes.
coaches, I think, are helping other teachers.
so essentially we're cutting the
Right.
class size down because we're having more teachers per class.
I've seen the math coaches last year when I like they would take kids into the cafeteria. And I think it's two things. I mean, I think I'm going to speak as a parent who is trying to teach math during remote and hybrid learning. And I do not consider myself incompetent in math. But the language is much different, and the way they learn is much different than I was taught. It's better, actually, because it's much more intuitive once you figure it out. But, like, do you know how many YouTube videos I watched to figure out what a number sentence is? And then I wrote one of my own about margaritas. But you know, so I think part of it is helping, you know, our elementary school teachers are generalists. Matt, you know, we have reading specialists in the school because we recognize that that is such a key foundation, that they need support and help in that. I believe math is a similar core foundation that they need help with. But what I saw in the school is you see the coaches working with teachers to help improve their whole teaching. But then you also see that I saw them taking small groups out who had been assessed as falling behind or having fallen behind during the pandemic and helping them get back up to level. So I think it's a mix of things. I mean, a question of what we can afford and what we can't afford is a valid one, but I would not belittle these positions or suggest that our teachers aren't doing what they need to do. I think they work hard, but I also think math is one of those things where if you miss a step, I missed factoring in 7th grade. I was out of school, and it took 2 years for a teacher to realize what I didn't know and to help me get back on track. And I think the hope is that we're identifying that earlier. So I think we should.
No, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm
agree on the choices, and I have a list.
I am really big on I'm really big on math, and I think we need to focus more on that. And I like keeping these. The question is, do we cut music? Do we cut English courses down a few? I mean, where do you know, somewhere along the line, we're not going to have enough money to cover all of these things. So I'm just posing the fact that, you know, we didn't have these positions. It was funded with funds, and now we don't have those funds. So, you know, you keep the math coaches and cut a language. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable about that either. Or if you keep math coaches and cut music, no, I don't feel good about that either. So, because all of those things contribute as well. So we're going to have to make some hard choices. And, you know, it's just, you know, that I'm looking at $1.22 million.
Yeah.
That's
We haven't
a
talked
lot.
about the public information officer very much, which is something we all know we would love to have, but if it came down to time with kids or...
I will also, we're going to finalize this component of it, but I will tell you on the public information officer, we may be able to carve out a 0.2 of that amount and put it into Perkins. One of the new challenges with CRTC is the ability of choice. So within the last year, they now you have to have a new area agreement signed every 4 years. So now we have a political campaign. We have to go down around and advocate to stay, those school districts to stay coming to us because they have the option to go to another one. We think that person will be helpful in doing that. And because of that component, we think we can put a portion of it in Perkins. It's allowed. Please confirm.
Yep.
We talked about it.
And all the marketing.
So that
do
would
incredible
help mitigate a
marketing.
little bit, yes. Because now that's a new hurdle we need to deal with. Just another thing for you to think about. So,
So, Jack, just off the top of your head that I know is in there,
yeah.
revenue from other districts versus 107,780.
Well, if we, you're talking about for CRTC?
Yeah.
It's over $600,000. It
And
more
so-
than covers itself.
I mean,
that program.
obviously, it's not comparing apples to apples, but it's something to consider when
The CRTC does a
keep
good job
that
in covering
program
its programs plus.
producing.
It's definitely
for us.
mitigating your tax rate, without
Mm-hmm.
a doubt in my mind about that.
And I'm not saying that the public information officer would single-handedly do that.
Right. And I know there's still a title discussion, but I just wanted to just let you
Yeah.
know we're thinking about that.
So would you be able to show us in a line item what that .2 looks like
Yep.
financially?
I'm gonna give you a new breakdown on
Okay.
that. Yeah,
Thank you.
We're gonna carve that out and give you a full description on what we're thinking and then kick some titles around.
Would it be not feasible to split it 50/50?
They can't, unless
They
they
can't?
work 50% on.
Oh, yeah, you have
CRTC.
to like allocate to the grant.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
all
So
right.
that's assuming one day a week they'd be dedicated to CRTC only,
Mhm.
hence the 20%.
Okay, that makes sense.
But if it's
Thank you.
40%, 2 days a week,
I mean,
I'm sure Ann could find that person work,
Yep.
but
Find
then that would
plenty to
take away
do.
from
Yeah.
district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to other
'Cause-
district activities.
Yeah, the director and I had the conversation, and I happened to be thinking, I called her up, and I said, hey, what do you think about this? She says, I think it's allowed, she was telling me, I said, confirmed with Ellen, so now we're kind of
Okay.
going down that. So if.
Go ahead. No.
Okay, so if I could, let me just scoot back to the presentation that I had. If that's all right, because I know we're getting close to your time, but I had questions, but let me go into the schedule. So you've banded around some positions tonight that were presented on the initial budget and overall where you're at. You see we are at February 22nd. The 6th is only a half-hour meeting on technology, and then you're right into the board meeting. I don't think there'll be much room for your discussion and deliberation. And then on the 8th, it's pretty action-packed with transportation, food service, and the SAU administrative staff. And you need to post a budget. So we're trying to see if you can give us any guidelines of where you want to go, because I don't know how magical I can be here in the kingdom on the 7th to move numbers. Is there, if you're trying to tell me you want to be at a certain rate, then we can come up with options, but I'm just trying to see, is there any positions that are absolutely off? I want to say they can go.
Well, I'll make a motion to remove the middle school SRO position from the budget.
Second.
Okay. Motion was made to remove the middle school SRO from the posted budget.
From the posted budget.
And, because there still will be public
Yes.
comment. And it has been seconded. Is there any further discussion? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
One nay.
Okay.
No. 2, 3. Nay.
2 nays? Okay.
3.
3 nays? Okay.
Do we want to do a roll call?
No.
No, I think if we know there's 3 and we're all here, so 6 to 3, that
6-3, yeah.
passes.
Okay.
Anybody else want to make any motion?
I think I'm going to have things that I would like to remove. I'm comfortable posting the budget and continuing those discussions because, like, I would like to see the presentation on CRTC and CHS enrollments. I will be honest that high on my list for removal is the new assistant principal at the high school. I understand the case for it, but I think when I'm choosing between math coaches and teachers, and other positions, I feel like we've added a lot to administration in the district in the past couple of years, which was very much needed, but that's where I'm leaning, is one of the things.
Well, and I'd agree, and I'm leaning I'm looking hard at the public information officer.
Me too.
To be quite frank.
Yes.
When it comes in, but I'm also willing to post the budget at this amount, and then we have busy sessions afterwards.
And I think I guess I would say I'm looking at the curriculum coordinator and the assessment coordinator because we have assistant superintendents now that we did not have before.
Right.
Assessment coordinator isn't a new position.
I know.
Okay.
Just one other thing that hasn't been brought up yet because we haven't talked about technology yet.
Yep.
But, and correct me when I go wrong on this, Jack, but we agreed to, we bought a bunch of new technology last year. We agreed to repay the amount of that technology over 1 or 2 years.
2 years.
And I'm wondering if we should be looking at stretching that repayment out based on the life of the technology involved, or that sort of thing. It's a fairly significant number, as I recall.
So that amount was 610,000 this year. That is in your budget.
Is
I
in
think
the
I
budget.
noted it in your transfers. So 610 over 2 years. If I had gone and borrowed that money, and remember, the logic of that is you are putting into a reserve fund that is earning a little interest, and we could move it between investment accounts, but to go out and lease equipment for 6-7% versus we can do 0, just to us made sense. Because if I had gone and financed it, it would have been for 5 years, and I'll show you what that looks like.
Right.
So our logic is right, but to bring up your point that if you want to amortize that over 5 years, I think it completely makes sense considering we're going into. It's going to be difficult to see that we're building a runlet in the next 2 years, but things could get a little crazy at the State House, and the next thing you know, you're saddled with another issue to deal with quickly. So I will show you that. It'd be 0% over 5 years. I think the payment would drop to like $244 a year instead of $610,
Significant.
and
That's-
there's about $300 and some thousand
That's a
dollars.
significant
Yeah,
change.
and it's
given what we're
0%.
looking
You're
at.
still putting the money back. That's what's great about what you're able to do there is you have the flexibility and you don't have to create that impact. The other thing I'm looking at is, did I spend all the money this year that I have to say, okay, this is what we had earmarked it for. These are some things now that are coming up that they need to take care of. Can I take care of that and still have enough to say, all right, we don't need to put it away? Say it's 300,000, and we put that away, and then we could maybe go to 0. See what I'm saying?
So Jack, to follow up on Mr. Cotton's line of thought, the question that comes to mind though is if we spend it up, what expenses do we have in technology coming in the next 2 to 3 years?
So,
Because
Pam-
we could have,
Yep.
the reason we did that is because it was a big expense that hit
Right.
last year. If we have another big expense that's coming next year or the year after, I'm gonna be a little less inclined to not pay it back as
Sure.
quickly.
But you could amortize some of that stuff a little longer. I think if you remember a couple of years ago, we tried to earmark 600,000 just for technology. I don't think it's going to be enough considering the technical needs. But in this budget is 600,000. There's 472,000 that is for technology, replacing grades 6 and 9, because we're going to get the kids when they come in, and then they own that equipment for the 3 years or the 6 years, rather than some of the other maneuvers we did. And then there's 128,000 that's going into your your technology trust fund.
And just to be
So
clear,
that's the
I
600.
mean, what we're doing is repaying ourselves.
Exactly.
I mean, the
Correct.
technology trust fund. So,
We're actually repaying the build runlet fund.
Yeah.
Is what we're doing. That's where we borrowed it from, so we need to be, so if you're thinking that we're not gonna be building runlet in the next couple of years, it has less of a feel or impact than if we think we will be, and we need that money.
Well, one of the things that I wonder about, and I know you're still working on getting us data about that, is that we know we have that health reserve fund that is over,
Yes.
and whether we can use that to repay the runlet, the technology money from the runlet fund.
Oh, if you want, you could vote to do that. I've already talked to the
Bring
auditors.
that down. And then sort of balance that debt is paid off, and then continue to figure out how much we need to put away to avoid spikes.
That is a good point. Mr. Croto.
So the concept is clear that we're repaying ourselves. But if we're repaying ourselves, that money's still coming out of the budget somewhere. And it's still going indirectly, perhaps, to some of these positions to be able to do those now. And that's the way I look at it, is if we defer those payments, A, the money's still coming from us, and B, what are we doing with that money that we're deferring? We're perhaps using it to fund some of these positions. question is, when does that stop? When do we say, enough is enough and we can't do this anymore? I just throw that out there as
That's a good point.
for thought.
No, it's a good point, Mr. Croto, because you're basically telling us that, yeah, we can make it look good this year, but we're committing ourselves to paying these people's salaries and this additional tax burden down the road. All right, that's a good point. Thank you very much. Great points. Anybody else have some further great points they'd like to bring up this evening? With that, thank you all for being so open and presenting all this information and answering our questions. I'm sure we'll have more. Is there anything else? Well, Jack, would you like to go over the schedule? Because you usually do.
Yeah. So we have March 6th, when you come back from the break, a quick half-hour meeting for technology, and then the 6 p.m. board meeting. The 8th, we'll hit transportation, food service, and the SAU staff. And then on the 13th is an open session, but we already know we're going to plug, if you want, technology in there and any other questions we still have for you, which we know there are still some open stuff plus stuff that came tonight. Then you'll see the CHS and CRTC enrollments, because that happens all the way up even past the break, and then they I think they're done now, but they put all that while we're away. They put all that data together to determine what is needed. Then you have 2 public hearings, both scheduled for 6 p.m., one at central office on the 20th, and then on the 22nd at Millbrook. And then you have an open session after the public hearing, and then we look to finalize a budget with 5 votes is the minimum you need to pass a vote. And then we'll revisit everything in October, maybe earlier, depending on what happens at the State House.
March is always an exciting place.
Never know.
Just one other question,
Yes.
if I could. I think everybody's aware that Deerfield is going to be voting on the contract. Will their vote potentially have any impact on this budget?
24-25 budget.
24-25. Okay, thank you.
Because that contract's till 24.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Go ahead, Mr. Weinberg. you have
Oh, I
a
was going to say, I know Ms. Walsh brought this up previously about if the government defaults on and reaches the debt ceiling, what are the implications on our budget for federal funds and grants?
Yep.
Yeah, I reached out to the New Hampshire Department of Education, and they forwarded our question. They did not have an answer themselves, and they asked their federal contacts.
Okay.
So as soon as I hear back from the division rep over there, then I will update.
I will say that is why I prepaid for the BGS HVAC system, and we are submitting this month to get reimbursed that
Yes.
$3 million.
that
Because I thought,
hefty-
let's do that now, just in case. Get that out of the way. But the prepaid discount didn't also entice me too, but, yeah, okay.
But I will say that typically that's very far down the chain typically of things that get cut. The allocations in terms of renewals, things like that. When federal funds get dispersed for the following year, we may see some changes, but I don't think we're pretty far down on the totem pole in terms of a couple $1 million. I don't think they're.
It's decimal dust.
It's tiny, yeah, it's tiny.
Out of a couple trillion, you think they won't miss a couple million? I can get down there and find it. I can
know.
mitigate this.
But I
could.
certainly will keep you posted as soon as I hear back from the division director.
Any more cheerful questions? Make us think of things that could happen in the next few months or so.
Any what ifs?
I appreciate everyone's time. I will remind the public and say that the public hearings on Monday the 20th, that will be here. It will be live and be streamed as we always do. The hearing at Millbrook on the 22nd will be taped and broadcast, and you're usually very quick about it. But,
Usually the next day.
But I just want to make
Try to.
if I don't want people tuning in on the 22nd and then being upset that they can't see, because it is just a technology thing with regards to that. And but Josh is in there, and he's going to assure me that they're going to be very, very quick. Any other questions? Not seeing any. Superintendent, do we have any other business?
non-public.
Excellent, then I would entertain
George,
a
did it-
motion.
Do you want a non-public?
Does anyone on the board feel we need to spend a few minutes on non-public to discuss anything at this time or
It's
not?
up there now.
I
Yeah.
do, and I also feel like that we may have matters to discuss in public after that non-public, too, so I.
You can't
unless-
discuss people in public.
But
I said other
matters.
matters, Ms. Higgins.
Oh, I thought.
So I.
Or should we do those
So-
first?
Well,
Well,
no, I.
no,
Okay.
I think the situation is this is a cue to me
Okay.
to tell folks that we will go into a non-public session. I can't tell you exactly how long that will be, but when we come back, we will be in public session and actually possibly conducting some business. Normally, we tell folks we're going to adjourn. I want everybody to be aware that that we may not adjourn after that, if I read this correctly. And could someone check with Josh if he's going to stick around or if we will just...
He will stay.
He will stay? In that case, then I
really
will say
is.
that following the non-public session, we will come back into a public session. So do I have a motion to go into non-public?
I move that pursuant to RSA 91A3, non-public sessions, Section 2C, matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the public body itself, unless such person requests an open meeting. This exemption shall extend to any application for assistance or tax abatement or waiver of a fee, fine, or other levy if based on inability to pay or poverty of the applicant.
Thank you, Ms. Meeker, and thank you for the second, Mr. Weinberg. This will be a roll call vote. Ms. Hastings?
Ms. Higgins.
Aye.
Ms. Robinson.
Aye.
Mr. Croto.
Aye.
Mr. Richards.
Aye.
Mr. Cotton.
Aye.
Ms. Welch.
Aye.
Walsh, sorry. Mr. Weinberg. Ms. Meeker.
Yes.
And I vote yes, so we're nine in.
All right, so with that, we are in non-public session. out of non-public session. At this point of the meeting, I would entertain a motion to seal the minutes of the.
So moved.
non-public session. Moved by Mr. Weinberg. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Croto. And I'll call for a roll call vote whenever you're ready, Ms. Hastings.
Ms. Higgins,
Not here.
Ms. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Croto,
Yes.
Mr. Richards,
Aye.
Mr. Cotton,
Aye.
Ms. Welsh,
Aye.
Mr. Weinberg, Mr. Meeker. I mean, Ms. Meeker. Sorry.
Yes.
And I am yes. So.
All right, so that is a 9-0 vote. With that, is there any further business for the board? Ms. Walsh?
I think we're all aware of a situation that's been going on in our community and around one of our schools. And while it is inappropriate for this board to discuss or make statements on individual situations in this case, I do think it's appropriate that we reaffirm our values as a board, as a school district, which we have stated in our strategic plan. If Mr. Dunn could put that up for
Call up a
us.
strategic plan. And the strategic plan, for people at home, the strategic plan can be found on our website. And you can click right through that if you want to look at that. So while we're, okay, that was, good job. So I was going to ask for further, but go ahead, Ms. Walsh.
So for discussion purposes, I would like to make a motion that we instruct the superintendent to issue a statement on our behalf, announcing that we voted tonight, hopefully, to reaffirm our commitment to our first goal in our strategic plan, which is our commitment to our district's families, mission, and strategic plan priorities, which include our vision to improve inclusiveness, uplift the voices of historically marginalized people in the Concord school community, and encourage an environment and create an environment that encourages personal exploration and growth.
Okay, motion has been made. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Higgins. And just for clarification purposes, if I'm reading this correctly, this is the first part of our strategic plan. Is this priority one, or is it just an introduction?
It is
Priority one.
priority one.
Priority one in our strategic plan, for anyone who wants to look that up. With the having been moved and seconded, I open this up for discussion. Does anybody have anything they'd like to comment or discuss? Question? Okay, Ms. Robinson and then Ms. Meeker.
Are we, as a board, open to expanding on this in order to, I don't know, just be able to be maybe a little more direct about, I don't know, it's great to have just a strategic plan, but, you know, we also, as individuals, have core values, and I wonder if anybody would entertain sort of maybe making the statement sort of more encompassing of what we value as a community, as a district?
So procedurally, that would be a friendly or an amendment
Is that
to?
You can offer
Additional.
amendments that
Mhm.
can Ms. Higgins and I can accept or reject, and then the whole board
Right.
would vote on them.
All right.
You know, I think, so if you have a
I would caution
suggestion.
that anything we add, anyone that read it would have to feel that it could apply to them.
Okay.
So we have to be
Yes,
very
applies
careful
to.
that we don't say something that's vague, but unvague enough that somebody could feel like it wasn't for them. Does that make sense?
It does,
Yeah.
yeah. Thank you for the clarification. Could I offer a friendly amendment to add some language to this statement that would read, Concord School District is successful because of the amazing and talented children and adults that make up this community. Each board member is here as a representative of that community, working always with the district's mission and policies as our directive, and with the success and safety of our teachers, staff, and children in mind.
Actually, that's excellent.
All right.
Is that?
If you
did I
could
do that?
accept a friendly amendment to your friendly amendment.
Oh, absolutely.
Which would be, I would put children first, but.
Yes, love that. Love that friendly amendment to the friendly amendment.
Ms. Higgins?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it. I think it's good.
Okay.
Second to that.
It was, we were the
We were the.
They were the, this
It was
is,
us.
we didn't
My
have to.
motion and her second, so we
This is-
accepted it as a friendly amendment.
Okay, I need help, just.
Yeah, could you,
Finish
Oh,
there.
sorry, yeah,
That's okay.
I can, I apologize.
doing a good job, Jack. Thank you, Mr.
done.
Dunn.
Speed
Speaking
typing.
dragon.
As our directive, and with the success and safety of our children, teachers, and staff in mind.
Jack obviously got a high score on his typing test.
All right.
It was in high school when they
Is that
taught.
clear?
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. While everyone is reading and going through that, Ms. Meeker, you are going to be next.
Thank you. I just want to be so supportive of building out a statement. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. I know that it's tough as a board. There are lots of things that we can't talk about. We want to be respectful of personnel matters and confidentiality, while also acknowledging that our community is going through some stuff. And as leaders in this school community, having a statement out there that just says, we're listening, we hear you, we hear your concerns, we value you. Anything that reiterates that is, I'm on board with, so.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Croto.
So can I ask Superintendent Murphy, have you had any thoughts about any kind of writing or things that we should do as a leader of this school district?
Well, I would concur with the members of the board tonight that said that there was a number of people in the community that were looking for some response for the board. And we took some time this week to try to review some thoughts around what would be an appropriate response. And, you know, I would say that the advice that I received was one of caution, because you as a board represent a very diverse community, right? With people who have opinions and positions on various issues. So that was the area of caution that I got in terms of advice.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have any comments or discussion points?
Well, I guess it's more
Go ahead, Mr. Weinberg.
But just to make sure that the S and the D are capitalized.
In school districts?
Yeah. Just,
Nope, much appreciated.
and do we want like the beforehand or?
The Concord School, yeah.
So I think it's appropriate that as I create the press, release this to the obviously to our families and our teachers, students, that we also make sure that we release it to the Concord Monitor and the local patch, and that we use letterhead that is the school board's letterhead, so that they recognize right
That is
away
from
that
us.
it's from you.
Is everyone in agreement with that? Any problems with that? Okay, other comments?
Just put a "the" in front of Concord School District.
Second.
Thank you.
Say that again.
Jack said it.
Yeah.
Personally, I will comment on the fact that I like that it's succinct. I like things that are succinct, but I also like that we're not, we are reaffirming our strategic plan and the values and commitments that we have confirmed or that we have committed to as part of that plan. So I do not have anything else to add to this statement. I think it's fine. I accept that. Anybody else have any?
I feel like, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No,
See, Mr.
please.
Chair. I also appreciate that the statement is succinct. I'm hoping that this, isn't necessarily an end, it's a beginning of any communication that we need to have with families as, time goes on.
Actually, I'll follow up with that and say that the board is, open to input and communication from all the members of our community. as we always are, and so that I think this is in accordance with that. Any other discussion? Not seeing any. Let's go right to the vote. The motion has been made and it is seconded. It has had friendly amendments which have been agreed to. So at this point, all those in favor of making this statement, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Further business. Does anyone have additional business for the board this evening?
As difficult as this work is, this is when being on a board can be very, very fulfilling. When people can come together with all their thoughts and emotions and create positive communication. So we have a pretty amazing group of people here.
Thank you, Ms. Higgins. Anyone else?
Motion to adjourn.
I was going to say, so I was going to ask the superintendent if she had any further business this evening. In that case, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Weinberg?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any
Do a
abstentions? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.